Well, it's good to be with you folks here tonight at the Central Springfield congregation. Finally, we get a chance to meet all you folks over here, and we're happy to be with you this special week of activity together, and we're going to take some time to get to know each other, and I know that we'll have a nice interchange of encouragement as well. And just to introduce ourselves to you, if we haven't already met you, my name is Randy Meadows, and my wife's name is Jolyn, and the way that you can remember her name fairly simply is just think of the book of Joel, and then you can put a Lynn on the end of it. Joel Lynn. So it's double L, one N, Joellyn. And she was supposed to be a Joel when she came out of Jolyn. She surprised her parents, right? So how many of you were supposed to be something and you came out and surprised them? Is that right? Some of you. All right, some of you, there you are. Okay, so you have a relation with my wife then. So we're looking forward to getting to know your names as well. And if we have met you before, we appreciate you just letting us know your name again. We'll see if we can use the time this week to remember your name and to get to know you a little bit better. Some people want to know a little bit about those who are traveling in the work, and since this is our first visit with you, we'll tell you just a little bit where we've served. We've served here in Oregon before. Back in 1991, we had a circuit over in the Bend area, over on the other side of the Cascades. We served in that area. And then the Society sent us over to Wyoming, and then to South Dakota, and then we went down to Kansas City, Missouri, and served in that area as well. And then we went up to Alaska, served the state of Alaska and also the Yukon in Canada. And then we came down here for this assignment here in Oregon, once again now between Eugene and Albany. So sometimes when you know where someone is from, especially in the truth, you kind of find out that it's really a small world, isn't it? And you get to know that we have some friends in common and names that we know that you probably know. So we'll look forward to getting to know you a little bit this week, and no doubt we'll have some common friends together as well. And this whole week is, designed to get out in the ministry together, and what we'd like to do is just take for a few minutes and reflect on the schedule that hopefully you all have. If you don't have a schedule, I know our brother Jeffries has some extra schedules in the back there. So raise your hand if you haven't already received a schedule. He has a few left, so raise your hand real high, and he'll make sure that you get one. There's one here in front, one off to the side over there, and one over here off to the side, over here to the side over as well. Keep your hand up so he can see you, and keep your hand up until you receive one, and he'll get around to get it to you. Unless he doesn't now, he doesn't have enough copies. You don't have enough copies? Do you have enough copies? Where are you going? You're running away. What? Oh, you got to be some more. All right. Okay. Well, in the meantime, while he's making some extra copies, let's just review the schedule together. We have opportunities to go out in the service, as you'll note on the schedule, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and again Sunday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, meetings for field service are scheduled at 9:15 in the morning, and then again at 1:15 in the afternoon. So that might be a little different from what you're used to, but the reason for the 9:15 hour is usually we can either make our meeting after those that have already had their meeting at 9 and still get out by 9:30 just like everybody else. So 9:15 in the morning, 1:15 in the afternoon, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On Saturday, the meeting for field service is at 9:30 in the morning. And then your elders have informed us also that your Sunday service is directly after your meeting in the afternoon. It'd be nice to have as many that can go out after the meeting as well. And, throughout the week as well, we have special meetings that are designed for different individuals within the congregation. Like, for example, tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, hopefully all the pioneers have made arrangements in their schedule so that they can be here at the Pioneer meeting. All 6 of our regular pioneers here at the Kingdom Hall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A very interesting outline for the pioneers. Tomorrow evening also there's been an adjustment. We usually have our elders and servants meeting on Friday. This week though we're going to be having that on Wednesday evening. So all the elders and servants will be here at 6:30 in the evening. So Brother Jeffries has those now. You can keep your hands up if you don't have one now. So all the elders and ministerial servants, make sure that you have that on your schedule to be here tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. at the Kingdom Hall, and we'll begin that meeting very promptly in the back room there. Now, on Thursday evening, we have the meeting for our book study, coming together as a congregation for the book study. And then we have a talk that's designed for the congregational needs. Now, as you remember, the Society encourages all publishers to be present on Thursday evening for the counsel that's to be given on Thursday evening. So make sure that you have that in your schedule to be present to receive that encouragement on Thursday evening. Now, on Sunday, the special talk is entitled, Why Fear the True God? Why Fear the True God? And a very interesting talk on Sunday, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. A very interesting discussion about the subject of fear, first of all, and how many times people think when they think of fear, they think of the dictionary term of fear. But in reality, the first definition of the dictionary is not the godly fear that the Bible speaks of. So if you can invite individuals this week, your Bible studies, return visits, something of that nature, give them a little, tidbit about what is godly fear and why are we told to develop it and maintain it. I think they might find some interest in that topic, and you never know, they might show up. Very interesting how many people show up for this discussion of why fear the true God. And what you might do is, if you get a chance, before you leave tonight, pick up some of the handbills that you have for your congregation, and go ahead and write down the name of the topic for Sunday's discussion, Why Fear the True God, and see if you can make it a goal this week just to get that handbill out to one or two people in the service this week. And then, of course, after that, you have an abbreviated watchtower without the reading of the paragraphs on Sunday, so you want to remember to come prepared to make your comments without the reading of the paragraphs. And then there's also a concluding talk I think you'll find very encouraging as well. So Joel and I are looking forward to being with you. We would want to make opportunities to work with as many as possible. We can't work with everyone, but we'll certainly try to include as many as possible in our car groups throughout the week. And hopefully you've been able to adjust your schedule from the normal schedule so that you can have more of a share this week in the service and be here at the meetings with us. And I know that we'll have a very good week of activity together. So let's start this week off with a subject about a familiar phrase that you probably are knowledgeable on, and that is with regards to faith versus work, or faith and work. Especially since faith, according to James' writings in chapter 2, he says that faith without works is dead. Now, when you think just for a moment, if you were to talk to someone about this subject of faith, first of all, one can come to the conclusion that in and of itself, faith is not really that rare of a commodity. When you think just for a moment about faith, since the dictionary says that faith is really just a belief, or it starts out with a belief, one can imagine that many times people demonstrate faith in day-to-day activity. Like, for example, say you're going to the doctor for the very first time. This is a new doctor that you've never been to, and maybe that's familiar to you. You walk up to the door and you're looking for the doctor's name. You might not even know exactly how to pronounce the doctor's name. It's so strange to you. But you walk into the doctor's office and you look around, and it looks like, a very nice doctor's office. And you've never seen this doctor before. In fact, you don't know that he's really a doctor, but, he has the degrees on the wall. There's the degrees. It says that he graduated from this university or that university with a doctor's degree. You don't take your cell phone and call up the university and make sure that there really was someone like that graduated, because, they look real, and there's nurses around, and it is an office, and people are visiting him, so he must be a doctor, right? So the man comes in, he's a perfect stranger, and he asks you a few questions, and of course you just go ahead and just tell him everything about your life. Any personal question he asks, he has the right to know the answer because, well, he's a doctor, isn't that right? And so you tell him all the information, and then after he's done with you, he gives you this little slip of paper that you can't read because it's written in such terrible handwriting, you don't know what it says, so you have to take it to another stranger. You take it to a pharmacist. You've never seen him before. You hand him the piece of paper, and he looks at it, he goes, I'll be right back. And he comes back with a bottle of chemicals, and he hands you a bottle of chemicals. You look at the name of the chemicals. You can't tell what the chemicals are. You never heard those chemicals before. You really don't know the combination of the chemicals. But the man tells you that if you take those chemicals, you're going to feel better. Now that's faith, isn't it? So that's all faith. Isn't that faith? Isn't it amazing that we demonstrate that kind of faith almost every day? But in reality, that is not the scriptural faith. That's not biblical faith. So here's the definition of biblical faith. It's found in the book of Hebrews chapter 11, and I know that you probably have read this text before, but what's interesting about this text is the Apostle Paul puts a definite definition to scriptural faith, biblical faith. Hebrews chapter 11, that's called the book of faith, right? And I want you to notice that his description of faith or definition is actually given in two points that he mentions here in Hebrews chapter 11. And we're going to take these 2 points and define them just a little bit. Let's see what he says, what faith actually is. He first starts out there in verse 1 by saying faith is by definition, now here's the first phrase, the assured expectation of things hoped for, comma. That's the first phrase. Then he adds to that, notice, the evident demonstration of realities, though not beheld. That's the second phrase. So let's evaluate the first phrase. What is Paul actually saying faith is? Well, first of all, he says that it is the assured expectation of things hoped for. And according to your Insight volume, it says that this particular Greek phrase, assured expectation, literally means a confident assurance, and that it is used in many times in the Greek language with a business document. And in fact, it came to denote something that was beneath, that was unseen, or a guarantee. Now listen, a guarantee indicating a future possession. A guarantee indicating a future possession. So some references actually use, instead of the thought assured expectation, it uses there, it is a title deed of things hoped for. A title deed. Now when one thinks about this particular phrase, a title deed, they start to get the picture of what Paul is trying to give us the flavor of here. Like, for example, if I were to tell you that I'm going to give you a piece of property in Arizona, and here is the title deed. It is a documentation that that piece of property actually is there. You've never seen it, but you see, here's the title deed, and it's stamped and notarized. So you have that title deed in your hand, and it gives you the description of the piece of property. Then you, with all intents and purposes, recognize that you now own a piece of land. You've never seen it, but it must be there, and it's right according to this description. And so the first phrase is basically that. It is an assured expectation. Now, this is not blind faith, because the assured expectation is based on certain facts, certain things that you have learned from God's Word, the Bible. And therefore, your faith basically becomes an informed faith, not a blind faith. But now the second phrase comes into play, because notice what it says, that it is not just an assured expectation of things hoped for, it is also the evident demonstration of realities though not beheld. So now here's a very interesting phrase. Your Insight volume helps you to appreciate what it is, that basically the meaning of this term or phrase actually tells us that you have developed a conviction based on the evidence. That the evidence has given you a conviction so powerful that it becomes equal to your faith. It becomes equal to your faith. So that, in essence, if you believe what you know, then that belief becomes so palpable that it becomes evident by what you do. By what you do. So in part, the evident demonstration comes from you. The evident demonstration of the realities, though not beheld, comes from you, what you do. So you see, then faith really is demonstrated by works. And with that definition by the Apostle Paul, you would think, if you listen carefully now, you would think that people would get it. But you see, Christendom blurs the subject. Because so many times you'll hear people say, all you have to do is believe. And that's the first phrase. All you have to do is just believe. And sometimes, they try to use the emotion to, believe. And if you just believe, and if there's emotion behind it, then you must be saved, right? Believe, But if that were true, Adam would still be here. Because Adam believed in God. But he didn't have the evident demonstration, you see, that went along with that faith. And in essence, the book of James says the same thing about the demons. James chapter 2 and verse 19 says the demons believe, and yet they shudder. Why? Because they know that their imminent destruction is nigh. And so he helps us to reason on this. Look at verse number 18. He says, nevertheless, in chapter 2, James chapter 2, verse 18, he says, nevertheless, a certain one will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith. By the way, this is a impossible claim. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I shall show you my faith by my works. In essence here, James is saying it is impossible to demonstrate biblical faith apart from works. Impossible. And that's why he says, this is the key text in verse 26 now of James chapter 2. Indeed, as the body without spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. So what is a body without spirit? Well, without the life force, it becomes a dead carcass. And the dead carcass is generally, it's not good for anything. You have to do something with it. You have to bury it. Because if you don't bury the carcass, then it begins to stink. And the same thing from a spiritual perspective. It says that a person who claims faith and has no works that go with the faith, then that faith is dead. And just like a carcass, it needs to be buried. Otherwise, it begins to stink. And you know what that means. It means it's the blatant proof of hypocrisy that an individual may claim faith, but he has no works to back the faith up. Isn't that interesting? So this is why many times Christendom, gets so upset because truly they don't have the works that go to prove their faith. What's interesting about James' writings, though, is that it really applies to all true Christians. Did you notice that, last Sunday, the last few paragraphs of that watchtower, it said all true Christians, all faithful Christians, all active Christians are involved in the ministry work. Did you notice that? I don't know if it was just me, but it mentioned it like a half a dozen times just in the last page or two of that watchtower. And this goes right along with what James is helping us to appreciate. So when we think about the importance of faith, why, we recognize then that just like that man with medication, he may receive the medication and he is told, look, if you take the medication, you're going to get better. And he believes that that's going to happen. It does him no good unless he takes the medication. Isn't that right? He takes the medication, does something that demonstrates that he really has faith in what he's been told. The same thing is true for all of us today. The Bible helps us to appreciate why works as true Christians today are so important. What we'd like to do is while there are many different examples in the book of Hebrews chapter 11 of people of faith, I'd like to pick out two of them. Two out of the book of Hebrews that are mentioned as people of faith, and just see what lesson we can glean from them tonight. These two individuals are completely different. These two individuals, one a man, one a woman, they lived at different times in history, different eras, different races, different backgrounds. But what these two people had in common was that they had a faith that was demonstrated by works. And the Bible tells you, now remember as we go through these examples, the Bible tells us over and over again that anyone who claims faith in the true God will be asked to prove it. You have to prove it. Now let's look at the first example. The first example is a man who was actually called the father of all those having faith. Who was the father of all those having faith? Remember who that would be? What was that? So, did I see your mouth? Yeah? Do you remember? Abraham. That's right. Abraham. We just talked a little bit about him in the Bible reading tonight. So Abraham. Now, why was he called the father of all those having faith? Let's talk about it. First of all, Abraham was born in the city of Ur. And if you know anything about Ur, you come to appreciate that Ur, although even its ancient, foundations were found between Baghdad and the Persian Gulf, in its day, it was not just a no man's desert. In its day, it was like a comparison to Beverly Hills, or it was a comparison to the French Riviera. Because you see, Ur was a beautiful place to live. It was situated close to the Euphrates River, where individuals would come, merchant ships with exotic imports, and eventually Ur became a very, very wealthy community. It was a very upstanding community with regards to wealth and opportunities for people who wanted to explore business. And people wanted to go to Ur because of all the seemingly modern conveniences. Archaeologists say that they unearthed generally homes. The average home was 14 rooms. They were 14-room mansions on the average. And they say that most of those mansions had running water and air conditioning. Air conditioning. Now, how they developed air conditioning? What they did is they used marble. And apparently, according to archaeologists, they have this white marble in the veranda area of these huge homes. And they would direct airflow through these verandas, that the white marble would actually cool off the air and eventually make this home like an air-conditioned home. It gave it a cool feeling, even though it was in the middle of the desert. And, people just loved the city of Ur because of all the opportunities that were there. Higher education was the thing of the day. And there was much to be said about religious opportunity because there were tons of false worshipers in the city of Ur. Archaeologists have undug ziggurats, idols, teraphim, and all this indication of all the different false forms of worship that were there in Ur. And in fact, what's interesting also is that Abraham's father, Terah, actually, according to Jewish history, owned an idol-making shop. That's because he was not a true worshiper of Jehovah God. So you think just for a moment about Abraham, and he was surrounded by all this affluence and idolatry. He could have had many opportunities to really become a very physical-oriented man, a very materialistic-oriented man. But he didn't. Why? Because Abraham didn't believe in Ur. He didn't believe in it. He didn't put faith in it. He put faith in the true God Jehovah. Now you ask, well, how did he learn about the true God Jehovah? Because he lived in a patriarchal society of where you usually get your faith from your father. But Terah was not a true worshiper of Jehovah God. So where did he learn it? Abraham, according to the Insight book, apparently learned it from his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And that was Shem. Shem was his grandfather. Great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. 8 greats behind him. And apparently the Insight book tells us that their lifelines crossed by 150 years. By 150 years, Shem was able to cross the lifeline of Abraham. So here, Shem, that is Noah's son, was able to firsthand give Abraham lessons in true faith. In fact, that Shem would have been the perfect person, right, to instill that kind of faith in Abraham. Because here he was an eyewitness to so many things. He could have said, look, Abraham, I was there and I saw the Garden of Eden. Perhaps he saw the Garden of Eden from outside. And maybe he saw those angels, And you should have seen the angels. They were 2 buff men, out there swinging their swords. Can you imagine that? And I saw the wickedness of the day. And I helped my father build that big ark. We put it together. And I saw miraculously how Jehovah helped us to gather all those animals in such a short time. And then I saw the first rain that came down and flooded the earth. I saw that. And I saw the rainbow. And I heard about Jehovah God giving us the blessing and the promise of the seed that was to come. And I'm telling you, Abraham, just as the rain fell down from the heavens, Jehovah God has promised us that there will be a seed that will bless all mankind. So Shem was able to instill a hope, to give him faith, and to help him develop conviction that led to action in his life. And this tells you something. I see a number of young people here, in your congregation. And I want to tell you something. Abraham's example tells us that it does not matter if your parents worship Jehovah or not. You know, say for example, a parent were to leave the truth. Abraham's example tells you that you can still learn the truth about God's Word, the Bible, dependent on who you choose to hang with. Whom you choose to hang with. They can help you to develop that kind of faith and conviction in the truth of God's Word. Either way, Abraham, remember, was a person of faith. But remember what we told you is that Jehovah always asks for people of faith to prove it, right? So let's see what he asked Abraham to do. Go to the book of Genesis just for a moment. Genesis chapter 12. And he asked him something very great indeed. Genesis chapter 12. Jehovah God asks Abraham to do something. Let's see what he says. He says, and Jehovah, verse number 1, proceeded to say to Abram, go your way out of your country and from your relatives and from the house of your father to the country that I shall show you. And I shall make a great nation out of you, and I shall bless you, and I will make your name great and prove yourself a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and him that calls down evil upon you I shall curse. And all the families of the ground will certainly bless themselves by means of you. Now that was called the Abrahamic covenant. And what Jehovah God asks Abraham to do in order to receive that covenant is to leave Ur. To leave it. So that was going to require great faith. I mean, Abraham had to leave it all. Now remember, Abraham was a very wealthy person. He probably owned one of those 14-room, if not larger, mansions. And we know that because he had, the Bible says, over 300 slaves. Over 300 slaves. He was a very, very wealthy and a very successful businessman. So here, Abraham was going to have to start to downsize and prove that all that material thing, those material things that he had was not his basis for faith. And so you can think of it, how he did that. You know, he's going to have to call the real estate agent first, you know. Get rid of that big mansion, Sarah. We have to downsize. And then he's going to have to get rid of a lot of things because he's going to go live in a tent. He's going to leave the air conditioning and the running water, and we're going to go live out in the desert in a tent. And Sarah had to give up that too. She couldn't go to any more bazaars. No more bazaars, you know. No more places, big shopping centers, you know. She had to start downsizing in her mind frame as well. And that took faith. You know, and when you start having big garage sales to get rid of everything, you start finding out basically how much those things are really worth. Have you ever had a garage sale? You think you're going to make millions. You know, look at all this stuff, good stuff we have, you know. And people come and go, I'll give you a quarter for it. You know, but you take it. Say, okay, a quarter, you know, something, you know. But it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing. And Abraham had that attitude. You know, it's like, hey, it's not worth anything. Let's downsize. We're going to go live in the desert. Why? Because God promised me a nation. And now you can just imagine what people were thinking. You know, here's this guy. He's too old. Where's he going? Out in the desert. Because some God he's never seen, can you imagine that, has promised to make him a nation. And they're going, boy, he's really got a problem, doesn't he? But there he goes. He leaves. He leaves it all. And remember, in the Mesopotamian culture, you know, once you leave that kind of a city, it's like you're dead. It's like, because you can't communicate with people back in Mesopotamia. It's not like you have email or something, you know. Hey, we're doing great out here in the desert. You know, you're gone. You leave it all. He left it all. He put it all on the line. And he left it. Because he was a man of faith. That's why he did it. And then Jehovah gave him the nation. Isaac, there's your nation. There he is. Now go sacrifice him. A man of faith. Only a man of faith could have done that. Here's the second example. The second example is of a woman. A woman found in the Bible. Her name was Rahab. And she was a very interesting woman. She lived in Jericho. Remember who Rahab was? She was a prostitute. Very interesting that the Bible would pick out such a woman to give us an example of faith. Because now before you judge her, remember, although she was a prostitute, she was planning on changing her career because she had started to develop faith in the true God Jehovah. Now, how did Rahab start to develop faith in the true God Jehovah? Well, according to the Bible, it indicates that Rahab started to hear stories of a desert people wandering around in the land of Canaan, trying get their promised land. And one area after the next, they were conquering, and seemingly without any type of weapons. I mean, not very many weapons they carried. They weren't really a people that were very strong with weaponry. And especially as they hear about all these different rumors, now they're thinking about coming and getting Jericho. And Rahab starts to think about this, and the true God Jehovah, whom the Israelites worship. And now they're camped out around Jericho. The people of Jericho think they're just a bunch of nuisance, so they just close the gates. And they think no one's going to penetrate our walls. Because you remember, Jericho, huge walls, these huge ramparts that they built. You could build houses on top of them. They're so huge, of which a house Rahab also owned. But she starts to hear about these things. And people start to think, now here's all these little people. They have no weapons to take us on. You know, all they have is their reputation, that they've been conquering different people. And anybody who was going to determine who would win such a battle, if they were determining it by sight, they would have laid favor on Jericho, not on the Israelites. And so, when the two spies showed up at Rahab's door, it is unmistakable that she had developed faith in the true God. And Jehovah was asking her, you have faith? Prove it. Prove it. And so she put it all on the line. She let the two spies in and she hid them. And she knew that if she was caught, she would immediately be put to death. But she knew that if she didn't do something to demonstrate her faith, it was all over anyway. Because it wasn't if the walls were going to fall. It was when the walls were going to fall. So she put it all on the line. She put it all on the line. She said, it's Jehovah God that I want to worship. And then she asked the two spies, would you tell your God to please remember me? What an act of faith. That was a woman of faith. Now, both examples, as you know, put it all on the line. And what happened? One became known as the friend of Jehovah, and the other, the ancestress of Jesus Christ. Isn't that something? Because of their faith. And now today, we have a whole bunch of individuals here just in this little congregation. All of us are striving to be people of faith. And what does Jehovah ask us to do? He asks us to get out and preach the good news. That's a main act of faith today. And some of us, it means everything. It's like it's all on the line, just going to one door. There's big time nervousness for me. Or for some others, it may be very difficult to make the sacrifice and not allow the materialistic world or the promises of the world to distract us. But when we put our faith where our mouth is and we start to act on what we say we believe, that makes the difference, doesn't it? And Jehovah remembers us. And we become, friends of Jehovah as well. But now what's interesting about this thought about, making sure that we preach, because Romans chapter 10 says that is the most important work of faith today. That everyone who calls on Jehovah is going to be saved, but they can't call on him unless you go out and preach. And now he has a congregation of his people around the world. Every individual member striving to do just that, because they're people of faith, that's why. But what hinders us at times is maybe the lack of personal goal setting. You heard so much here tonight about the importance of setting spiritual goals. And in fact, the Bible indicates, according to the Apostle Paul's writings, that we really have to set goals in order to be successful in demonstrating our faith. The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 26 says that we must run with certainty the race of life. Run with certainty. So you can't just be out there fumbling around, trying to accomplish your ministry. We have to be direct and have spiritual goals that will help us. But I want to demonstrate something over here on the board, a little illustration that shows why sometimes we may sabotage ourselves in this. So we're going to go over here to the board and just demonstrate this with a little quick illustration here. I'm going to show you my artwork here. This is my extensive artwork. Do you have this kind of artwork? 4 people. These are 4 people. We're going to number them. 1, 2, 3, 4. All sizes and shapes, you see? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you could look into these people's minds, you would find out something about goal setting. If we looked at person number 4, you could look into his brain. His mind would look like that. It would look like an empty box, nothing in it.
There's nothing in it because he doesn't set any goals. No spiritual goals for this person. He is completely empty-headed when it comes to setting spiritual goals and achieving some type of spiritual value. He's going nowhere. And this person, he can sit in front of like a television screen with snow and be completely satisfied. Because he has no goal in life. Say, what are you doing today? He doesn't have a goal to answer you. He just looks at you, stares blank. So we call him blockhead. He's the blockhead. Number 3, person number 3, this person sets goals. That indicates his goal. But between him and his goal is this brick wall. This is a brick wall here. And every time he tries to reach his goal, he hits this brick wall. And the brick wall is illustrative of obstacles. That he can never reach his goal because he always has too many obstacles in the way. And, every time he tries something, something keeps him from doing it, and he allows the obstacle to hold him back from reaching his goal. It's always something, it's always something. You try to encourage that person. You say, well, why don't you try this, or why don't you try that? And he always comes back with his favorite phrase, yeah, but you don't understand. And he always comes back with another obstacle, because he looks at the obstacles so well. He knows his obstacles so well, it keeps him from reaching his goal. It's like, I can't do that, you see, I'm too old. Or I can't do that, I'm too young. See, I can't do that, I have 25 kids. I can't do that, I'm trying to have 25 kids. I can't do that, I don't have a car. I can't do that because I don't have gas. Or whatever it is, So he always has an obstacle. Always an obstacle. So we call him the yeah, but man. Yeah, but, because he always has an excuse. The excuse man. Number 2, this person sets goals. In fact, this person sets lots of goals. He says, I'm going to go here, go do that, be him, be her, do this, do that. All these goals, lots of goals. So if you could look into his brain would look like this. And we call him the spaghetti head. The reason why is because this person, he starts out on one goal, but he gets quickly distracted, and he never finishes what he starts. Never finishes it. It's like, I'm going here, I got tired there. I'm going here, I'm bored now. Let's do this. I can't do that. I'm going to do it. He gets distracted too quickly, Never finishes what he starts. It's like a person who, this brother said, is like the person who has the TV channel changer, And he clicks it, and he clicks it, and he click, 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 and he never watches anything. So never watch television with him, because you'll never watch anything. Person number 1 is different. Person number 1, he sets goals, and this person always reaches his goal. 100% of the time. It doesn't mean it doesn't have obstacles. He has obstacles, but he always looks for the solution to the obstacle instead of focusing on the obstacle. So this person 100% of the time reaches his goal. He's very much on purpose in reaching his goal, and he always creates spiritual value for himself. Okay, now how many of you identified with one of those people? Or just go, raise your hand, go ahead and confess. Okay, don't do that. Okay, so we don't want you to do that. Because what we want you to do, now listen, here's the moral of the story. In reality, all of us are all 4 of those people at any given time. Are all 4 of them at any given time. Sometimes we're like person number 4. What'd you do today? Nothing. Well, you had all day. I know, didn't do nothing. And sometimes you're like person number 2. I had 100 things to do today, and I didn't get one of them done. So I started that one, but then I answered the phone. Then I started that and went to the dishes. I never got anything done. Sometimes we're like person number 3. Too many obstacles. Can never see our way through it. Too much mud. But at times you know what it's like to reach goals. And that's when you've experienced, like the figure number 1, reaching your goal and creating value. And you know how it feels when you've done that. You know how it feels. It feels good that you have joy behind it. And that's indicative of people of faith. That people of faith are always working to set spiritual goals and create more spiritual value. And this week is all about that. All about setting spiritual goals that will help us to be people of faith and people who demonstrate that faith by the works that we have. That's why the Apostle Paul said in Titus chapter 2, verse 14, he said, be a people zealous in what? Fine works. Why? Because works tell you about the person's faith, don't they? And faith without works is what? It's a dead carcass. It needs to be buried. So this week we're going to be focusing on how we can make improvements individually and as a congregation. Thursday night, we're going to pick up on this topic a little bit more, and we're going to incorporate it into the congregational needs and the personal goals that we can be setting individually to help our congregation to continue making progress. So let's keep in mind the importance then of demonstrating our faith by our works. And it's been nice to be with you here tonight. How many do we have in attendance? What was our count from our attendance tonight? What was our count? Including those tied in on the phone, we got a grand total now of...
We had 103 at the beginning, 100 for your talk.
Okay, so 103 we're going to go with, huh? Is that including? Thanks for that. So we have 103 is that including the ones in the... okay, 103. Very good. Well, it's nice to see 103. Wasn't it nice to have 103 here in attendance tonight? We're going to sing a final song. Song number 90. Let's see. Song number 90.